Good morning and welcome to today's webinar, Preparing for a Virtual Matchmaker. Before we get started, I'd like to take a few moments to go over some housekeeping items. My name is Paul Federico, Vice President here at the Greater Cleveland Partnership, and I'll be your organizer for today. As we listen to Rich in the presentation, I'd like you to, first of all, take a note that we want you to ask questions during the presentation. So take a look to see where it says questions. If you click on that, it should open a box, fill in a question, and just press enter. I'll be relaying those questions to Rich during the presentation. I'd also like to thank our Matchmaker sponsors. As you may already know, the Matchmaker plan for July 28th is going to be rescheduled for later in the fall, probably September or October, so we'll keep you posted on that. But we wanted to thank those sponsors that make that program possible. 88 Ohio Comp, Medical Mutual, Minutemen HR, which are all long-time sponsors of GCP, and we're very proud of them. We also have McCarthy, Levitt, Crystal, and Liftman. We have VSP Vision Care and Spry Personal Primary Care. Thank you to all of them for sponsoring our Matchmaker and this program today. Now, on to the presentation. We are fortunate today to have Rich Delisio. Rich has served in the Ohio Procurement Technical Assistance Program, or more easily known as PTAC, at Ohio University since 2009 as a procurement specialist. His government contracting coaching includes serving 10 counties: Ashland, Carroll, Medina, Wayne, Summit, Stark, Jefferson, Holmes, Richland, and Tuscarawas, and 200 clients. Rich received both his MBA and BSBA from Youngstown State University. Rich has over 25 years of procurement management experience, 12 of which he directed the Material Management Purchasing Department at YSU. Without further ado, please join me in welcoming Rich to our presentation this morning.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you, Paul, very much for introducing me and allowing me to talk about the capability statement today. We are going to focus in the 1 hour mainly on what I think you should get ready for the Matchmaker. The capability statement has a lot of life, a lot of different uses, but we're going to focus mainly on the Matchmaker today. I'd like to start with my couple acknowledgments. The material that I use and I've been using for capability statements mainly comes from a government consultant, target.gov. Gloria Larkin is the president. She has given us Ohio PTAC permission to utilize her information. We get this information from her research and presentations at the national level. And I'm just a big fan of it, and I think it's a simple way to use it. So that's why I'm going to share it with you today. Down below, we talk about the Procurement Technical Assistance funding. It's a cooperative agreement with Department of Defense. DLA, Defense Logistics Agency, is the procurement side of Department of Defense. Ohio Development Services Agency, and Ohio University. And this is important from the standpoint that your tax dollars prepays for my salary and for my being here today. So please feel free to contact me as far as PTAC in general, and definitely during the hour with your questions. So what is the capability statement? It's a one-page document that's really going to highlight the areas of expertise for a company. We think it's very important to include 5 basic components that are listed on your screen. Part of the culture, especially the government culture at the federal level, relies on the capability statement. And we've been using it and sharing it with our clients, and we're getting Ohio, especially the state of Ohio, to be more informed and also recommending it and utilizing it. And we have a lot to thank our business partners, our business resources, like the Greater Cleveland Partnership, MBAC, SBDC, and other people that also share our interests. So the 5 key elements, and this is pretty much our agenda for today. Section 1, capability statement, core competency, section 2, past performance, 3, differentiators is 4, and basic company data is 5. Down below, I listed new section SAT flip side. That is something that I just added last year, and we'll talk about that towards the end of our hour. The other point I'd like to make is with the virtual program you're going to be dealing with, you want to give your elevator speech. It would make sense to me for you to basically run down this list, talking about your core competency, your references, which are your past performance, your differentiator, and your basic company data in that order when you give your speech at the Matchmaker. The capability statement is a company resume, and it's often requested by government agencies or prime contractors when they're doing their market research or your initial meeting with them. You may have to provide the capability statement for a bid or proposal, sources sought, request for information, or at an industry day. Industry day is where you would visit the fort or the location of the office that you're trying to do business with. Sources sought and request for information is how they do market research at the federal level. And that key part to that is anything under $250,000 is a small business set aside. So for those of you, especially looking for your first federal contract, you really want to target the small business set aside, whether it is general small business, women-owned small business, 8A, hub zone, or service disabled vet. Those are the set aside socioeconomic categories that they utilize. But again, the key there is you want to build a relationship with a small dollar contract. That's true of any level, but especially at the federal level. The dynamic small business search is pretty much a web version of your capability statement. You populate that through your SAM registration, which is one of the basic first steps in government contracting. Your PTAC, myself, or one of my colleagues can help you with that in the future. So the format, we want you to keep it simple from the standpoint of you do not want a lot of information. People no longer read, they scan information. So you want to make sure you have a good spacing provided on it. You also want to make sure that you're utilizing basic colors from your website, brochures that are, what's your brand, so to speak. You want to stay consistent with that. It's a lot easier. And the other point I'd like to make is a lot of times contracting officers will print it out just in black and white format. So it's really not necessary to add like a 3D look to it. So section 1, you call it capability statement, top of the page. It's kind of like a header. Okay, nothing too fancy. Make sure you have basic information on there so that they can contact you right away. The core competency is where you let them know that you are an expert. And you also pretty much want to make sure that you're staying in your swim lane. The point I'd like to make here is at the end of your bullets, and we call them bullets because you just want to use short phrases. Again, they scan, do not read. You don't want a paragraph, but you want to maybe put your last bullet, design it with the idea of who you are talking to, one of your 5 meetings at the Matchmaker. So as an example, I wrote ABC company provides the services NASA requires. You take information from their website, from their mission statement, and incorporate it into what you do on a daily basis. So the content of the core competency, again, this is your section 2. You're going to talk about yourself. And again, remember, we're going to want you to have this information in your head ready to talk in advance when you have the meeting with the buyers at the virtual Matchmaker. So again, you want to make sure that there's no paragraphs, short phrases, and you want to keep it short and to the point. Section 3 is very important, probably the most important, because this is your reference point. You know, everyone has a track record. Everyone's very concerned about their track record. And I think that you have to keep that in mind. So the buyers, when I was in charge of purchasing at Youngstown State University, I would always look at the references and make sure I would pass on that information to my departments. So if I was talking to the person in charge of facilities and I noticed that the company did work at Kent State or Akron, I would call my counterpart and get the information from those schools, whether or not they had a good good performance, whether or not they would use them again. And that's very important. And that's the same thing you would do before you hire someone to do work at your house. You're going to check references. So remember that. And the key point here that I'd like to make, and what we emphasize, is that the information is recent and relevant. That's why we don't think you should put things older than 2 years. Now, if you don't have anything, you need to fill in that spot. You can put different type of awards, different type of grants. I have people that have gotten grants, and I encourage them to use that. If you publish an article, anything that shows your expertise and shows your interest in government work, you could put it in there. The other thing, the first, again, if you're looking at a federal audience, federal market, you want federal procurement references first. If you don't have them, any type of government procurement would be fine. So again, the content and what you're looking here, this is, and again, I think it's the most important. I think it's where a lot of times the buyer's eyes go first. They want to see your reference point. The government, any government, local, state, federal, they don't want to be your test pilot. So it's important that you illustrate here what you have done and what success you have had. You want to list the people information and make sure you get their permission to do so. And again, this would be something that you would list on your individual capability statement. And what I mean by that is, you're going to be sitting down with NASA or Kent State University or Cleveland Clinic, whoever it may be, at the Matchmaker. You want to make sure that you have information designed for that audience, and you can list the individual, the endorsement of the person that you did work for. You do not want your contact information going out in a generic format that you may just give out to anyone. You want to be very protective of your, you don't want to lose your endorsements. So you want to be very protective and keep them in confidence. Here, I want to give you an example again as how you would illustrate if you are trying to be the prime contractor. And just a basic statement, short bullet phrase of what you did, reducing costs, added value, whatever it may be. If you don't have past projects, again, you're going to have to list something else. But I think that is what really stands you out, and you want to try to prepare that and understand that's what they are looking for too at the federal level. They can pick whoever they want, and we are finding more and more that past performance is essential to getting in the door. If you were a subcontractor, you would list, basically the same thing, only I am the subcontractor to prime, blah, 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 whatever it may be, and then you talk about that. You would need their permission to give that testimonial phrase out. But again, that would be something a lot of contractors start as a sub, and that is, kind of leapfrogs them into the prime contractor because they've had experience at the location or with the agency, whether the state or federal agency. Again, if you maybe had 20 years of corporate experience, and it is something that's relevant to what you're dealing with, you list it in its past performance. Again, you would need the company's permission, but if it is something, software provider, whatever it may be, or project management experience that is relevant to what they're looking for, you want to make sure that you list it, and you want to make sure that you highlight it very strongly. So section 4, differentiators define, on one of the earlier slides, I listed the word brand next to it. I think that's a good focus as far as this is how you separate yourself from your competition. From the standpoint of how you add value, what do your best customers say about you? And this is really essential for you to separate yourself from other people. I have a client that does a lot of work with universities, and they separate themselves by adding value by providing backroom assistance for their promotional products. They were able to do that with universities, and that added value to utilizing the value of doing work that would not take staffing at the university. So when people ordered from their promotional products on the web, it went directly to the account that was going to be charged. And that was a huge value added, and it provides them with quite a few university contracts across the country now, because they all use the same e-procurement system. So you have to know your market, and you have to add value, and this is definitely where you want to highlight that information. Section 5 is the company data, and this is again where you're going to put a lot of information that's relevant to what you're trying to do. The codes, NAICS codes, Federal Supply Group, Product Supply codes on the first line are utilized for federal. UN SPST codes are utilized at the state of Ohio level. CAGE code is the number that you are assigned once you are in Systems Awards Management, which is again the database for federal procurement. You have to go in that database to be eligible for federal contracts. And again, PTAC can help you with a lot of this research and help you develop these things over time. I'm kind of glad that they rescheduled the Matchmaker, because if it was on the 28th, that does not give you enough time to do a strong capability statement. You're going to want to do it 3 or 4, maybe 5 times before you have your actual meeting, because it takes a lot of time to make sure it's right. And again, you want to be flexible in your approach and have different versions. So if you have, again, 5 appointments, you're going to have 5 different capability statements, and maybe just different in the past performance or part of the one line of core competency. Overall, it's going to be similar, but you're going to want to personalize it as much as possible. Social media, it's important to have that, we think, and it's also important to list it on your capability statement. Socioeconomic certifications, whether they're at the federal or state level, you would list here. Women business enterprise, minority business enterprise, EDGE is part of the state, disadvantaged business enterprise, 8A hub zone, service-disabled, veteran-owned small business. Also, you would want to list any certifications in your industry. ISO 9001 in manufacturing. CMMC is the cybersecurity certification that's going to be a requirement for federal contractors in September. So that's also something that agencies and prime contractors, Lockheed Martin, companies like that do a lot of government work, they're going to look for that certification before they bring you on as a subcontractor. Also, you want to list any contract numbers, GSA, blanket purchase orders. IUCPG is Inter-University Council Purchasing Group, which is State of Ohio public university contracts. State term schedules is also State of Ohio contracts. They operate very similar to the GSA at the federal level. What I mean by that is they are a price agreement, price schedule, kind of like you and I would shop on Amazon.com on a catalog. The GSA state term schedule and also the IUCPG has price agreement schedules that their buyers utilize on a regular basis.
Hey, Rich,
Yes.
quick question for
Yes.
you that came
Sure.
in. Is it no longer recommended to include a DUNS number?
I don't think the DUNS is that important. To me, more and more the DUNS is kind of like your social security number, and I would avoid listing it. Again, if you're going after federal contracts, I would list the SAM. And then depending again who you are trying to do business with, I think there's more relevant data that you want to put in there.
Got it.
I think it's very important to list geographic coverage, and especially when the Northeast Ohio Matchmaker, a lot of your buyers are from Northeast Ohio, and they're going to want local buyers. Local companies, especially for services. And I think that's important to highlight at the Matchmaker. But again, I am starting to think that the DUNS is not as important. And also from the standpoint of federal contracting, in December, the DUNS number will no longer be part of the Systems Awards Management System. They're going to start incorporating a new identification number. And where I left off, IDIQ is indefinite delivery, indefinite quantity. That is, again, utilized at the federal level on a very large and strong basis. Again, accepting credit cards, that's very important, especially if you're distributor product based, because you're targeting that small dollar purchase. You want to get in the door with a small dollar purchase, and then that will lead to a relationship, stronger relationship, reduce the risk, and then you go from there. So this is what is new to the capability statement. At least I think it's the most important thing, is what you put on the flip side, the back side of your one-page document. SAT stands for Simplified Acquisition Threshold. And again, that is anything under 250,000, which we mentioned is already the small business set-aside amount. But at the federal level, with Simplified Acquisition Threshold, they can buy with 3 simple quotes instead of going through the formal bidding process that could take 6 to 7 weeks. And we're seeing a lot of that, especially now with the COVID-19, from FEMA and the Army Corps of Engineers. They're purchasing and buying and hiring contractors too for small jobs under that $250,000 amount with 3 simple quotes. And again, the reason I'm emphasizing this is because you want the buyer you want to start building that relationship with your meeting at the Matchmaker. The best way to do that is to emphasize that your willingness to do small dollar contracts. The micro purchase threshold that I have listed here, under $10,000, is what they utilize for credit card purchases. Okay, so it was recently increased from $3,500 to $10,000, and during COVID-19, they are allowed to go up to $20,000. This also includes any contractors. So it doesn't just have to be a small business to utilize their micro purchase threshold. The other thing about the flip side, you want to emphasize some of your best solutions, some of your best products under the $250,000 amount. So you're going to have a couple of checklists. You may have one under 5,000, one under 10,000, 25, 50, etc. Whatever it may be, you're going to have different assessments to show what you're capable of doing at the various dollar amounts. And again, your goal here is to build that relationship, the trust, establish a reference point moving forward. I had 2 contractors that utilized this approach and got their first federal government contract last December. And since then, they've both have had 2 or 3 additional contracts. The one just had a contract over $400,000. So again, you start small and you build moving forward. I want to make sure you understand that, because I think that's really the conversation you want to have with the buyers at the matchmaker. You want to know if you can do a small dollar purchase, small dollar assessment, whatever they may have as far as in your area of expertise, and really utilize that in your conversation. I would recommend that you save the capability statement until the end, or even with your thank you after the meeting. But that's just my own belief. It's not Ohio State's, Ohio University's, or anybody else. I just think you want to have a conversation. You want to listen to what they're saying, and then a nice thank you with your capability statement to emphasize and wrap up and confirm what your elevator speech was. Makes a lot of sense to me. So again, using your capability statement, it's all about marketing. If this was in the past, it's a great outreach event, networking event. It can still be that, but again, keep it simple, keep everything, moving forward when you're dealing with buyers, contacts to government agencies. They can bombard it. And so they're just going to scan information. A one-page, a double-sided capability statement makes a lot of sense, and it's easy for them to remember and utilize. Buyers a lot of times are going to be assigned to certain classification codes, and they're also going to highlight, you want to make sure that you have the classification code that they're interested in and they do business with. And PTAC can help you do a little bit of that research. We have procurement reports that we do. One that I utilize a lot is called FedMine, for that very reason, to show what agencies are buying in your industry-specific classification. I would make your capability statement a PDF. Don't leave it in a Word document. You don't want anybody to mess with it. And one of the things I think is very important to understand, you have to be very patient and persistent with these people that you're meeting for the first time. You're trying to build the relationship. The person at the matchmaker may not be the decision maker either, but you're trying to get a good understanding of how to do business with that agency, prime contractor, public entity, whatever it may be. And, I used to work at Youngstown State. I would tell contractors that I met at trade shows to be patient and persistent, because you have to get a good understanding of who is the person at that agency, at that university, that buys or buys your product or service, and when that opportunity is available. It may be 6 months, it may be every December. You have to be understanding that, and you also have to be ready when that comes into play. One of my contractors, V2 Technology, many years ago, probably 9 years ago now, the Cleveland Matchmaker was the first time they sat down with NASA Glenn. And over the years, they've been averaging over involvement in contracts over $25 million. Okay, it's a simple thing to do, but you have to be able to start that relationship, make sure it is something that they need. In the case of NASA Glenn, they outsource a lot of IT staffing, and V2 Technology was an excellent match for that. They were able to get involved in various projects as a subcontractor, again, as a sub, not as a prime. And that's very important to understand. The other thing that I want to mention is what type of contract vehicle, when you're making your plan to do your appointments and who you're meeting with. Again, we help you with the research. I'm providing a couple of websites that I think are very important. Federal Procurement Data Systems is one of the free federal procurement system sites that I think you should look at. The Ohio Checkbook will tell you who state agencies buy from. Federal News Network is a lot of information for federal employees, and they highlight a lot of what agencies are doing. And I think it's a good place to go for insight into federal government. Again, it's basically news. It's not opinions, editorials, but it's information that hopefully can help you lead you to opportunities with the agencies that you're targeting. And I think it's very important, you want to target certain agencies and certain companies based on your research. If you're a veteran-owned company, you definitely want to look at Veteran Affairs. The veteran hospitals purchase over 20% of their expenditures from veteran-owned companies, both veteran and service-able vets. So that's a key thing to look at when you're looking for what agencies to target. So there's open procurement, there's set-asides. The vehicles, we talked a little bit about GSA. There's others that I'm not going to go into right now. The key point here is at the federal level, over 50%, around 52% is purchased through vehicles. And what that means is open solicitations are covering roughly 48%. So if you are not at a vehicle that the agency is looking at on a regular basis, you're already at a disadvantage. So again, look into that. It takes time, a commitment of time to prepare yourself for federal procurement, and hopefully you'll consider PTAC as an extra set of eyes and help you through that. The direct vendor purchase, SAT, I mentioned 3 quotes, best offer. That is also utilized at the state level. The state has just initiated their own e-procurement system called Ohio Buys. Within that framework, they do, and it's the same dollar amount, $250,000. They do quick buys under $250,000, where it's 3 quick quotes. It's not a formal process that you would need to fill out a 30-page document. So when you get a chance, start looking into Ohio procurement. You have to be registered in the Business Gateway, and you have to use those UNSPSC codes that we mentioned earlier. Whether or not you can set up a small blanket order or credit card purchase for your first contract, I think that's also one of the things you want to look at. You want to put in your head and in the buyer's head, I'm looking for my first contract, small dollar assessment. What do you have? Try to get them to follow in on that, and then follow their forecast, the agency annual reports, follow them on LinkedIn if you can also. Asking specific questions, and again, be ready to follow up and be patient and persistent. From that is very important. And I think I'm done talking. I wanted to leave a lot of room for questions. I could tell more stories, but I think it's very important that I hear from you. This is my information. Please look at our website if you get a chance. If you want to send me an email and tell me what county you're from, if you want me to look at your capability statement draft and give my 2 cents, I'll be glad to do it. If you're in the Cuyahoga County area, you would report PTAC as far as our counselor up there is Karen Weibel. Jane Stewart has Lake County. The 3 of us do Northeast Ohio. We're in communication almost daily, so we would be glad to help everyone in attendance today.
Got a couple questions, Rich. Earlier, you mentioned testimonials, and someone's asking, how would you recommend approaching people to get those testimonials?
Well, again, if they have done work for you, again, what your best customer says to you is very important. So, we're, as an example, we provided, blah, blah, blah. Let me go. I'm sorry. Subcontract. Let them know you want to list them in your capability statement, that the work you did for them, and let them describe it, what value it was, why it was important, things like that. And then ask them if they can use, you can use their contact information. If your contact, and maybe you did the work there last year, the year before, is no longer there, try to get a reference point so you can list the company for that very project. I think that's important. You don't want them to be listed without their permission. If they do not give you the permission, I would still list the information if you can, and then try to work with that through the buyer moving forward. My person is no longer there. Let me try to get a contact to confirm what I'm telling you. So you can, again, that's another way to develop that relationship and extend the meeting in that format. But again, I think it's very important, and I think it's critical that as a company, you have, you're concerned about your track record, and you want to make sure it's very positive. Years ago, again, at my Youngstown State job, I was reviewing a construction contractor. We were providing a proposal, small dollar proposal. They were the low bid, but when I checked their references, all three said the company never completed the work. We didn't give that contract to that, you know, that company. It's that simple. And you can understand that, again, from your own residential home experience. You're not gonna hire a painter or a plumber without a strong reference point. And so keep that in mind. And then also from the standpoint of the buyers, they're also concerned about their track record. So if they have a new 4-star general, they're going to make very sure that they do their research on references before they hire contractors for this new 4-star general. It works the same way.
Thanks, Rich. There's also another question of capability statements you've seen. What makes the good ones, like the really ones, just stand out to you over the others?
Well, again, and I'll be glad to share some of the ones I think are really good. I got permission from my clients to share their statements. Anyone interested in seeing a couple of those, send me an email and I'll be glad to share it. But very basic, I think the spacing is important. I think you highlight your reference points strongly, 1 or 2 bullets, you know, with detail. I'd like the flip side, emphasizing the small dollar contracts. I have one that I share with my clients on a daily basis that I think hits the point, you know. But you know, I'm not going to be writing a marketing book. I think it just in the viewpoint of what exactly is highlighting your company. You should be proud of it. You should be confident. Okay. And if you do not feel comfortable with something on it, you have to work towards getting information on there that's going to be of interest and give you confidence moving forward. One of the things that as a PTAC counselor, we encourage our clients to do a capability statement, but also understand it's constantly upgrading, revolving, and you know, you want it to be stronger in 4 or 5 months. You want to be, you know, you want to be excited about adding a new contract, and it could be, you know, a contract with the city of Cleveland. It could be Cuyahoga County. It could, you know, it could be anyone. You know, local vendors especially should look locally for government contracts. It makes the most sense, and I think that's what one of the things I like about the Matchmaker. It's very strong, and you know, I've been going to it for 8 or 9 years. It's very strong in its format that it emphasizes Northeast Ohio with government agencies and large corporate contractors, prime contractors, some of which do federal work. So I think it's important to understand that you're going to the Matchmaker. You know, they're not going to have contracts in their pockets and hand one to you that day, but you're going there to develop relationships, develop resources, and a better understanding of how to market yourself to these agencies and to federal government. And we feel very strongly that the capability statement is an easy way to do that. But again, I'll share what I have with anyone.
Rich, how important are presentation skills? One person mentioned that they care about their business, they're excited about it, but they're, as far as presenting, they're not the greatest at that. How important is that? And if it is important, how do you get better at that?
Well, I think you get better by, like anything else, you practice. You know, I mean, so do it in front of a mirror 5 or 6 times. I think the format, and I think the earlier webinar that Joe Scott and Larry Brown did, my PTAC counterparts did on some of the keys for the virtual meeting, your elevator speech, match your elevator speech with your capability statement. That's a simple way to have 4 or 5 basic points to show and share. It's more important to have a conversation, to listen, and to be ready to talk about yourself and your company than it is to rattle off what you've been doing for the past 6 months. So I mean, be yourself, be polite, be professional. That's what you want to do. I mean, I think that's the key. And if it's your business and you've been going at it and you put a lot of hours in it, I gotta believe when you talk, the passion comes through, and that's the most important thing.
Outstanding. So I think we're done with questions. I think we could wrap up. If you have any final thoughts, Rich, before we do that.
No, again, I'm encouraging you to you have they're pushing the date back, which I think is a good thing for the standpoint of trying to get, there's a lot of uncertainty in business right now. I mean, I think that's one of the reasons we're seeing not as many buyers as involved in the past, because they're really not sure what they're doing for a lot of these companies and agencies. So please keep that in mind. So even if it's a smaller number, I think it's a worthwhile experience from the standpoint of you're going to be one of 5 or 6 that are meeting with these buyers instead of one of 30. So right off the bat, to me, you got better odds. I mean, so I would look at that. And again, we think that these programs are important from the standpoint of contacting them, getting some face time, and moving forward and trying to build that relationship. So I can't emphasize that enough. I mentioned B2. There's other companies that I have worked with over the years, and it's very rewarding for me to work with all these great companies in Northeast Ohio, and it's very rewarding when my clients tell me they got their first contract. I had a client, she's been a client for like 8 years. She's gotten through, we have a bid matching service, and she's gotten contracts in Iowa and Arizona, I know off the top of my head. She does HR staffing testing. Okay, so it's pretty basic stuff. She has her niche, so to speak. Anyway, she got her first Ohio contract this past year, and it was very small, but she was more excited about that than anything. And I think that's important to remember. We have Wright Pat, we have NASA Glenn. They like Ohio companies. I mean, they're local, they're closer, it's easy to deal with. We get contacted a lot from large prime contractors that are doing work at NASA or Wright Pat that want local people to be involved as subs. And we encourage them to share their capability statement with these primes. And that's going to be one of the first things they look at. So to have the capability statement ready for both the agencies, prime contractors, any type of networking, teaming where you're going to get a partner. And I also like to have on hand my clients' capability statement. I keep a library of them for that very reason. I share with other clients across the state, with other PTAC counselors, with prime contractors that contact us. So it's important to have that readily available and to have it in a short, sweet document that people are going to look at and reference back to on a regular basis. And I'm done talking now, Paul. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Rich. This has been great stuff. You clearly know your stuff. A lot of great responses. Thanking you for the presentation today. There was also one question about the link to the other webinar. We'll make sure to send that in an email to everybody, so make sure you have it. It's actually cozy.org/MYB if you actually need that, but we'll send that to you as well. Thank you again to our sponsors. Again, without them, we'd really be lost. Medical Mutual, 888 Ohio Comp, Minutemen HR, McCarthy, Levitt, Crystal Liftman, VSP Vision Care, and Spry Personal Primary Care. Thank you to everyone, and we are done with the webinar.